first win. Well, here with me in the studio, I'm joined now by Brian Schneider, the head of international content for News Tank Football. Let me just start by asking you your thoughts on that, how the game panned out.
I have to say, the whole night just felt a little bit weird. Earlier in the day, we heard of the problem with all of the moss being stuck inside the stadium of the Stade de France. They left their lights on because they left the lights on yesterday. Cristiano Ronaldo, arguably the best player in the world, goes off. He's substituted at 25 minutes. So everyone thinks this is France's game. And yet, as the game goes along and France doesn't get the goal, it just felt like something weird might happen. And then right there at the end, Portugal gets the goal at the end from Eder, a striker who plays his club football in France at Los Lille.
Okay, and Charles Pellerin, you're here from the sports desk. Just put this into context for us. This is a historic win for Portugal.
Yeah, absolutely. This is it's kind of a reward for their efforts because they've made it at least to the quarterfinals to every edition of the European Championships since 1996, even getting close to winning in the Euro 2004, which is at home in Portugal. They just lost 1-0 against Greece, so maybe this is their revenge actually because they're inflicting a national humiliation on the host country of this edition, France. And there's one thing actually, like apparently the Portuguese squad made a covenant two years back when Fernando Santos started his job as manager of Portugal. The first friendly game was against France at the Stade de France. They lost that game, but they promised that they would come back here and win the final. So
and they've done it.
They've done it.
And they've done it without Cristiano Ronaldo.
Well, exactly, because he was stretchered off amidst great drama a couple of minutes into the game. Then he came back. Then it appeared he couldn't carry on playing because it clearly hurt his knee
it looks
so badly.
like a fairly serious injury. It's a fairly substantial injury. In my view, there was a foul on the play that Dimitri Payet had come in and fouled him. He wasn't trying to injure him. It wasn't a yellow card. It should have just been a normal foul. But either way, the result is still the same. Ronaldo is injured with what looks to be a somewhat serious knee injury, and who would have thought that Portugal would get any chances in the game? And for the most part, they didn't. And surprisingly, in extra time, Portugal had more chances than France. And
France had more possession than Portugal throughout the game.
Right.
And it's extraordinary, isn't it, that we throughout the evening we've been talking, and you've been saying to me that, Portugal very much pinning their hopes on Ronaldo, and without him, they were really, at sea, and it appears they've managed to pull it off.
Absolutely, with an unlikely hero, Eder, who's only scored actually 4 goals and 29 caps for Portugal. So it's really unexpected. I think the best they were hoping for, maybe you can disagree with me, was that they were hoping to get to the penalties and win it there. And in the end, they got it before that. So it was really the perfect scenario for Portugal.
You had to think that they were going for 0-0 in penalties, and as much that as the fans may not want that, well, certainly not the French fans, and maybe not neutral fans around the world either, but that would have been a logical thing for Portugal to do. But surprisingly, they had a couple of corners, they had a couple of chances right there in extra time. They were a very tired team. I was sitting there watching the game. As soon as it goes to extra time, it's like France has got to get a goal here. They're the fresher team. They've been on the front foot. They've been attacking more. There has to be a lot of questions. Why couldn't France generate more offense in the extra period? Why was Portugal getting more chances at that point?
Was it frustration? Isn't after a while, perhaps if you get too many chances and don't put them in, then you start
it's a little bit frustration, and it's this weird thing in football when you have so much attacking talent. You just think, okay, put on another offensive player. On comes Martial, on comes Kingsley Coman, who actually played pretty well. But all of a sudden, you get all of this attacking players on there, but they don't know how to necessarily play together because no team in the world plays with 6 or 7 attacking players. So it becomes very congested in the penalty area, and it seems it's hard to find something to do.
Would you say that's symptomatic of the way France has played? I mean, they've had flashes of brilliance, but sometimes there's been a lack of cohesiveness and of tactical discipline.
It's always it's interesting to go into hindsight and look at these things. I've never been a big fan of the lineup decision of Didier Deschamps to play Paul Pogba and Blaise Matuidi at what they call the double pivot, the two people as the central midfielders in the back. I actually think France plays a lot better when N'Golo Kanté is in there as a defensive shield, a defensive midfielder, and that allows Pogba specifically to create more in attack. And Matuidi and Pogba never really seem to figure it out. And this is the third game in a row that Deschamps has gone with this lineup. It worked against Iceland, but France was far more talented than Iceland. Against Germany, you could say in the first half that Germany were the better team before the penalty. So was the lineup really working?
Okay, so but if we put to one side the possible strategic flaws as you seem to see it on the side of Les Bleus, how well did Portugal play? I mean, did Portugal play well in your view?
In regulation, no. I mean, once Ronaldo went off, they were probably going to bunker, as they say in football. I would say France clearly were the better team, but the most surprising thing to me is that Portugal were legitimately the better team in the extra 30-minute period, and that's very, very surprising. France, of course, we could be talking about a very different thing if Gignac doesn't hit the post right in extra time right there. That was the chance, and it was a spectacular move. He did everything right and got unlucky and hit the post. So,
do you both consider that to have been the closest there was to a close moment out of the actual game
that
itself?
Was definitely the one that could have. I mean, just a few millimeters the other to the right, and the goal goes in, and France win their third European championship. And no, it doesn't go that way.
We're having a very different discussion right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and what about Les Bleus as a whole? Because of course we've talked a lot about Les Bleus. You've even been a guest on this channel. We've talked about Les Bleus. They've been through some dark times, and yet everyone seemed to have a lot of hope that Les Bleus were going to deliver France some good news, some overdue good news. It hasn't happened. But do you think the team as a whole has perhaps come out of the woods, and that we have a new chapter that has been turned, a new page for the French national team?
I would say yes. Overall, France right now has one of the most talented national teams in the world, and that's not going to change. The result tonight doesn't change that. They still have some fantastic young players with Griezmann and Pogba and Payet, who actually was not so great tonight, but even Kingsley Coman came in and played well. This is a fantastic attacking team. You could say they were a bit unlucky in regulation, and then they were poor in extra time, but the talent is still there. This is a top side.
Yeah, and if you look at the overall, if this was a league and not a championship with a playoff, France have a better record than Portugal. France have won 6 out of 8 games, is that right? And drew 1 and lost 1?
Well, yeah, now with the loss tonight, of course.
One, whereas Portugal, drew 3 and in regular time, drew the first round of 16 and the quarterfinals before actually winning in regular time the semifinal, and then this one in extra time again. So it's definitely not something to be ashamed about for France. It's just the way of football. Sometimes you got to take your chances when you get them, and that's what Portugal did tonight. And it's kind of a mirror game of what France did to Germany.
Right.
Portugal did to France tonight.
There's a bit of irony in that in European football especially, you have these teams that can't be another team. Germany was never able to beat Italy until this tournament when Germany beat Italy. And then France is never able to beat Germany, and then of course France prevailed in that one in the semifinal. Portugal hadn't defeated France in, I believe, something like 10 games or so. It's certainly not in the last 4 or 5 years.
Since 1975 was the last one Portugal beat.
That's even longer.
Well, it was 10 games though, but it was a friendly in 1975. And Portugal have never beaten France in a major tournament. They've lost 3 times. Last time in World Cup 2006, the semi-final. So no, this is quite the accomplishment, and I'm sure that Lisbon's going crazy right now.
Yeah, well, we can actually see the scene in Lisbon. Let's just take a look and see what is happening in central Lisbon. A sea of fans there in the Portuguese capital where, as we can see, huge celebrations. Look at that. Let's just listen in for a moment. The excitement there. Okay, well, that's what's happening in the heart of the Portuguese capital. Let's go to the heart of the French capital and go to our own Kyle Brown, who's on the Champs-Élysées. Kyle, just tell me, presumably a rather disappointed sort of atmosphere where you are, rather subdued, I'd imagine.
Well, I tell you what, it has been subdued. We were broadcasting earlier from the restaurant just beside me, an Italian restaurant, neutral territory, if you like, here on the Champs-Élysées. We've just come out, and it's a completely festive atmosphere. You'd never know that France had lost. These guys are getting a bit too cocky for my liking, but in any case, it's been festive, more or less good-spirited up until now.
Okay, Kyle, well, you stay safe amidst that. Do stay safe. Well, it looks like it's rather feisty fans there. We've actually seen quite a lot of feisty fans during the course of this evening. Of course, there were some ugly scenes a little earlier on in the evening with that game in full swing. There were some ugly scenes outside the fan zone at the Trocadero Palace in central Paris. Let me just ask you, Brian. I mean, do you get the impression this evening that the French, as a nation, are going to be proud of how their national team performed? Clearly, they did so well to get as far as they got.
They should be. They ultimately still had a very good tournament. So I would say certainly the country should be proud of their team. That doesn't necessarily mean they will be. I don't know. It's they're going to feel like if Ronaldo comes off at 25 minutes that they probably should have won the final. So it does leave a bitter taste at the end. But that's, like we said, in knockout football and tournament football, that's part of it. But there's a lot to be proud of this team, and there's a lot of positive moments will come from this group of French players in the future.
Are you glad it didn't go to penalties? Can I just ask you as a sort of personal
In a way,
opinion?
yeah, because it always feels like it's kind of like throwing the die. It's like you never know if there's a clear winner. I'm ready to, I mean, as a French fan, I'm ready to accept defeat at the feet of Portugal. If they score within extra time, that's fair game, you know. And I think it's always better not to go to penalties, because penalties is too much of a twist of fate, I'd say.
Yeah, what are your thoughts? I mean, had it gone to penalties, I mean, do you get the impression that perhaps France would have emerged the stronger?
I mean, as Charles just said, you never know with penalties. They could really go either way. The only thing I would say is you'd like to think that France would have had a slight advantage there by having more strikers and more natural attackers on the field. But in penalties, that's not always a guarantee either.
And how does this victory, how's that going to feel for Cristiano Ronaldo? I mean, he was touted as the star, and then he only plays 25 minutes per game.
I was following Twitter a little bit while the match was going on. A lot of people were saying, oh, you know, Ronaldo is so selfish and full of himself that he probably doesn't want Portugal to win because they will have it done without them. And that's a bit unfair. He's really not that type of person. And you can see how much he cared even at the end of the match. He was generally a second trainer right there next to the coach trying to organize the team and help out his teammates. I really think it's going to mean a lot to him despite the negative circumstances.
And he did a lot to bring the team to the final to begin with.
Of course,
scoring 3 goals,
Portugal would not
assists.
have been in the final without Cristiano Ronaldo, so he certainly played his role.
It looked, I mean, I was watching the game intermittently. Obviously, I was on air doing the news, but it looked at one stage, I saw him reappear, and I thought, actually, maybe he's about to join his team again and start playing again. Did you get that impression, or do you think his injury looked pretty bad, though, didn't it?
Yes, it does look like a somewhat serious injury. I'm kind of surprised he was there jumping around on the touchline, even if his knee is that badly. But I think it's fair to say that emotionally he was still in the game for his Portugal teammates, and he has a couple of guys like Ricardo Quaresma and Nani and a few other players that they've been in this national team for about 10 years now. So even if it wasn't about him, and they have some younger players as well, but there's 3 or 4 other players that are of his generation, so to speak, that have been through the same battles as him. So he must be thrilled for those teammates.
And perhaps for his legacy as one of the best players in the world, I mean, something that he's clearly striving for, that he advertises a lot. It's kind of perfect for him because he kind of passes off as the selfless team player that a lot of people don't think he is, in a way, no?
Well, it's a good point because he has the rivalry, whether he wants it or not, with Lionel Messi. And Lionel Messi was in the final of the Copa America, which was held in the United States this year, but he lost that final on penalties, of all things. So now Ronaldo goes through and wins his big tournament, and of course Real Madrid won the Champions League this year. So Ronaldo has just won the 2 biggest trophies in football in the same calendar year. Whew. That's a really good question because he didn't have the best club season, but now you throw the Euro in there.
That's what people look at.
It could be another Ballon d'Or for Cristiano Ronaldo. Yeah.
Let's just talk for a moment about the whole tournament, how it's all gone. You know, Euro 2016. You know, France hosted this event amidst very tight security. Up until this point, things have gone pretty well. There were some ugly scenes at the beginning. Some English fans, some other fans perhaps didn't operate as the best ambassadors for their countries. But overall, it went pretty well. And then just this evening, about half an hour into the game, we saw those clashes outside the Trocadero. We saw litter bins and cars being set alight. And then France loses. It's almost like everything went so brilliantly well. And I think perhaps... Do you think that what happened in the last hour and a half of the game will perhaps be the lasting memory for people?
I would hope not, but having seen these types of tournaments before, I would suspect you are on the right track there. That will be the lasting images. Even though I really hope not, because it's been quite a successful tournament. As you said, there were the rocky moments, particularly in Marseille at the first few matches there, and the England and Russian fans also in Lille and Lens. But after that, the tournament really settled in the groove. I've even been to the fan zone a couple of times. It was a great atmosphere, so had a lot of fun down there. So I do hope that the images tonight aren't the lasting images of the tournament, but history, I would say, tends to judge otherwise.
There have been some pretty weird turns of events, though, haven't there, throughout this thing? I mean, for example, England being knocked out by Iceland. I mean, what stands out for you, Charles, as being perhaps, just looking back at the whole tournament, the sort of the highlight or the surprise point?
Well, I think Iceland is definitely going to be one. They were a fan favorite. I mean, it's just the perfect story, just the perfect underdog story. An island of 300,000 inhabitants, able to beat England, able to draw with Portugal, just with just simple team spirit. And that's what people, the kind of stories that people love in sports, is just people being able to band together to beat someone who's supposedly superior to them. And I think that's definitely going to be one. And then the communion between the Icelandic players and their fans, and the whole clapping phenomenon that they did after every game, that's been now then after that taken on by the French at the end of the game against Germany. That's definitely going to be, I think the fans are probably going to be the biggest images that are going to stay in people's brains. And obviously the Irish fans, the Northern Irish fans, the Welsh fans. I think it's that was possibly more entertaining than what happened on the pitch. Maybe, I don't know, maybe because of the new 24-team format. Has play been affected?
That was exactly the point I was going to make. Everyone was concerned about expanding the tournament to 24 teams, that this would dilute the product. But without expanding the tournament, you wouldn't have got the Icelandic story, the Welsh story, and those are fantastic stories. Even both Ireland and Northern Ireland making it to the round of 16. So for the fans' perspective, all of those are great stories. If we talk about the actual football itself, I would say that there's a trend in all international tournaments. So this is not just the Euro tournament, but also in Copa America and also the World Cup. Teams are finding out that in the knockout rounds, if you play a lot more conservatively and wait for the other team to make mistakes in a game that can go either way in 90 minutes, that's the better way to play knockout rounds. And you don't get that in club football because, of course, the best team wins over 38 games. But I would say the play has been a touch conservative. But that's not just the Euro, that's international football in general.
Let's leave it there for just a moment, because we're going to go to the Stade de France and cross to our very own Katavan